"My lord, may your house flourish for 10,000 seasons," I declared, my voice surprisingly firm, though my gaze, deliberately, was not on him, but on the composed, beautiful woman seated at his side, Lady Elara, the very one I'd been sent here to shatter. This was certainly not the greeting Dowager Morwenna had drilled into me. The old woman, standing just behind me, radiating an almost palpable wave of expectation, had insisted I fall to my knees before Lord Kaelen and call him husband. But as I saw the flicker of distaste, quickly masked, on Lord Kaelen's stern face at my mere presence, a different instinct, a survival instinct honed by years of precarious living, took over. My knees bent, but I swayed, as if overcome, and found myself kneeling perfectly before Lady Elara instead. I bowed my head low, the polished floorboards cool against my forehead. "My lady, I am Rhea. I am yours to command." A ripple of surprise went through the assembled relatives, all gathered for Lord Kaelen's birthday celebration in the sun-dappled main hall of their city estate. I could feel Dowager Morwenna's glare burning into my back, but I didn't dare look up. A light, melodious chuckle broke the sudden silence. "Well, husband," Lady Elara said, her voice like wind chimes, "she seems to have a certain charm. Perhaps we should keep her. She could be a companion for me." Lord Kaelen grunted, his eyes, dark and assessing, still on me. I risked a quick glance up. He was handsome, in a severe, imposing way, but his expression was unreadable. Lady Elara, however, was radiant. Not the harsh, shrewish woman the Dowager had described, ill-tempered, plain, cold, and undeserving of her station. This woman's eyes held a gentle light, and her smile, though small, seemed genuine. Around them, the eyes of many guests were watching. Lord Kaelen gave a curt nod, a silent, reluctant permission. And so it was that I, Rhea, along with my little maid Pippa, followed Lady Elara's personal attendant, a quiet girl named Lyris, away from the stifling tension of the great hall. Pippa, whose real name I'd never bothered to learn before whimsically dubbing her after the fluffy cloud buns she so resembled in her roundness, trotted beside me, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. I, however, pretended not to notice the envious glares Pippa shot at Lyris, whose name sounded so much more elegant than Pippa. Lyris led us to a cozy chamber in the western wing of the estate. "This room has been prepared for you, Mistress Rhea," she said softly. I stepped inside and gasped. I had expected something like the Dowager's Spartan quarters, a hard bed, a rickety table. But this room was an embrace. A wide bed draped with silk curtains the color of twilight, a carved wardrobe, even a dressing table with a polished bronze mirror. A faint, sweet scent, like dried blossoms and sandalwood, permeated the air. Looking at my reflection, a girl with wide, perhaps too knowing eyes, I almost drooled. The kindness was disarming. Remembering the Dowager's endless, harsh lessons on etiquette, which mostly involved abject groveling, I quickly dropped to my knees before Lyris. "Thank you, Mistress Lyris, for your kindness." Lyris jumped back 3 paces, her eyes wide. What are you doing?" Just then, Lady Elara herself swept into the room, her presence like a breath of fresh spring air. She gently helped me to my feet, her touch surprisingly warm. "There's no need for such ceremony here, Rhea," she said, her voice soothing the knot of anxiety in my stomach. "I value sincerity over stiff formality." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Then, remembering Pippa's oft-repeated superstition that sighing too much depleted one's vital essence, I quickly inhaled deeply. "It's not my fault, my lady," I blurted out. "The etiquette tutor Dowager Morwenna hired, well, she spent more time teaching me Sparrow's Flight card game than proper bows. I'm quite good at cards now, but the rest is a bit improvised." Lyris, who had recovered from her shock, gave a small smile and murmured, "Concubine, you should refer to yourself as this humble servant or similar." But Lady Elara waved a dismissive hand. "Nonsense. I like your spirit, Rhea. A fleeting shadow of sadness crossed her eyes. "It's refreshing." "I like you too, my lady," I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. It was true. There was a genuine warmth about her that I hadn't expected. Lady Elara paused, then a genuine smile, brighter this time, lit up her face. She leaned closer, and the fragrance that had so captivated me in the main hall, a scent of rare orchids and mountain dew, washed over me, almost making me dizzy. "You smell like the breath of the wind," I whispered, feeling like a dreamer. She chuckled, a delightful sound. "Lyris," she said, turning to her attendant, "please ask the kitchens to send up a platter of the slow-braised crimson boar hock." At that moment, nothing else mattered. A whole platter, with both the rich, meaty parts and the tender, gelatinous bits. Dowager Morwenna, convinced I'd grow fat and unappealing, had rationed my food to meager portions, sometimes only half a steamed millet bun a day. And now, there would be fragrant, snow-white rice to accompany it. I silently vowed that if I could have such food every day, I would greet the entire world with a benevolent smile. The Dowager had selected me, a girl named Rhea, for one purpose, to be a thorn in the side of her daughter-in-law, Lady Elara. On the carriage ride to the capital, the old woman had poked me. "This is the chit? You're sure she's sharp enough?" she'd asked her hawk-faced attendant, her voice dripping with disdain. The attendant had nudged me, whispering for me to lift my head, then quickly dabbed at my face with a perfumed cloth, grinning. "Look closely at this face, old mistress. Guaranteed to make any man's heart stray." The Dowager had initially eyed me with disinterest, but as she truly looked, her eyes widened, her tone shifting to grudging approval. "Such a foxy face, she certainly looks like she has the wiles to bewitch a man. Why does she speak so crudely then?" she'd muttered. I, hearing her disparaging tone, had felt a surge of irritation and, when no one was looking, secretly wiped my sticky fingers from the sweet millet cake I was nibbling onto her luxurious fox fur-lined cloak. To my surprise, she'd merely cackled, handed a purse of silver to her attendant, and taken me to her own city residence. I didn't like her, not one bit, but from that day on, I obeyed her every instruction to learn. The reason was simple: she fed me. I had fluffy cloud buns made from the finest white flour every day, 3 full meals. I even got my own little maid, Pippa, whom I'd named, much to her initial 3-day sulk where her eyes puffed up like walnuts each morning. Eventually, she accepted it, muttering, "Well, Pippa has a certain fullness to it, I suppose." I'd sighed. "Pippa isn't so bad. It's comforting, substantial. This girl has no taste." After about half a month in the Dowager's oppressive household, I finally understood her scheme. The entire Song family, as they were known before Lord Kaelen established his own prominent branch, now only had Lord Kaelen, her stepson, who held a significant post in a distant province. The Dowager had assumed that Lady Elara, no matter how arrogant before marriage, would be under her thumb once wed. But shortly after the wedding, Lord Kaelen had requested a transfer and moved out, establishing his own household. In 3 years, they'd had 2 children, though actually, the young master, Rorik, was already 5, and the second child hadn't yet arrived. The Dowager exaggerated. Their bond was deep, and Lord Kaelen had never even spoken of taking a concubine. Now, returning to the capital for a new appointment, he maintained his separate residence, refusing to return to the old family estate. The Dowager was convinced Lady Elara was behind it all. So, for Lord Kaelen's birthday, she was determined to present me to everyone and force me upon him, hoping to make Lady Elara so furious she'd miscarry. She believed that with so many relatives present, Lord Kaelen wouldn't dare refuse outright for fear of losing face. Hearing this, a chill had run down my spine. The word vicious came to mind. My small life felt forfeit. The Dowager was only Kaelen's stepmother. Their relationship wasn't close. If they had existing animosity, I'd be the sacrificial lamb. But my indenture papers were in her hands. I had no way out. Life with Lady Elara was a stark contrast. The next morning I woke late, the sun already high. No one had called me. Pippa was curled at the foot of my bed, fast asleep. Panicked, I dragged her awake. We scrambled to get ready, resulting in me rushing out with one eyebrow drawn decidedly lopsided. I practically flew to Lady Elara's chambers, leaving Pippa wheezing far behind. The Dowager had strictly warned me to pay my respects every morning, or Lady Elara would find an excuse to have me beaten. But when I finally bowed before Lady Elara, it wasn't her face that was contorted in anger, but mine. A sudden, sharp pain seized my abdomen. I clutched my stomach, a wave of nausea washing over me. Tears welled in my eyes. "My lady," I choked out, grabbing her sleeve, if anything happens to me, please take care of Pippa." Just then, Pippa stumbled in, her face a mask of dramatic concern. "Go in peace," her expression seemed to scream. I sobbed harder, feeling dizzy. Wasn't anyone going to help me? Lady Elara immediately sent for a physician and had me carried to my bed. Her gentle reassurances only made me cry more. It's strange how vulnerability works. When ignored, one can't shed a tear, but a single kind word can open the floodgates. I remembered my own mother, clutching her stomach in pain one night, and by morning, she was gone. Oh, spirits, I've only had the crimson boar hawk once. I haven't had nearly enough. It was too much rich food. The physician's voice cut through my tear-filled haze after he'd examined me. Not serious. Now that she's vomited, it's better. I'll use some needles to ease the pain and prescribe a decoction to settle her stomach. The young mistress is used to plainer fare. Such a sudden introduction to rich, oily food has unsettled her system. She must exercise restraint next time. He gave a few more instructions and, seemingly in a hurry, departed. I turned to Lady Elara, who was watching me, her eyes full of apology. "My lady, I'm better now." "It doesn't hurt anymore," I whispered, taking her hand. She gently stroked my head. "Rest first. You'll be truly well once you've finished the medicine." I nodded obediently. As soon as she left, Pippa tiptoed in, looking furtive. "What are you sneaking about?" I demanded. Pippa shushed me, pulling a letter from her sleeve.
"Sure."
The old vulture sent a letter. My literacy was rudimentary at best. I squinted at the characters, struggling to make sense of them, then thrust the letter at Pippa. "You read it. We're in this together, remember?" We agreed back at the Dowager's place. Out here, we stick together against her. The letter's contents were predictable. I was to drive a wedge between Lord Kaelen and Lady Elara and make Lady Elara's life miserable. I scoffed internally. I won't do it. She's been nothing but kind to me. Why would I bite the hand that feeds me so well? Besides, I'm no longer under the Dowager's roof. Still, I penned a reply of 2 sloppily written words. Rest assured. For now, I'd placate her. Buy some time. After all, both my and Pippa's indenture contracts were still in her possession. Lady Elara's pregnancy progressed, her belly slowly, surely growing larger. I, who did little more than eat and sleep, felt a strange unease watching her. When my mother died, the village elders had said she was carrying my little brother. I only remembered her writhing in pain all night. By morning, she was gone, and the baby, a frail little sister my father had carried out, was cold when he returned. I prayed daily for Lady Elara, for a safe delivery for both mother and child. Pippa joined my prayers, even swearing off Crimson Boar Hawk until the baby arrived. But Lady Elara seemed troubled lately, eating little, growing thin. I decided to take matters into my own hands, learning new recipes from a recently acquired scroll of Western region culinary arts, changing the menu daily to tempt her appetite. During this time, I befriended the young master, Rorik. He called me Elder Sisteria. Lyris said it was improper, but when Lady Elara, who rarely even smiled these days, actually laughed aloud at his pronouncement, Lyris fell silent. Rorik and I would sneak into the kitchen for sweet snacks, climb trees looking for birds' eggs, and inevitably get summoned by Lady Elara for a scolding. though I usually got the worst of it, especially after Rorik slipped from a tree and I lunged to catch him, spraining my arm in the process. Lady Elara's eyes had turned red with distress, and after that, she couldn't bring herself to raise her voice at me. Saving the young master felt worth it. The Dowager Morwenna paid another visit. This time, Pippa couldn't feign an excuse to stop her, and she stormed in, face thunderous, demanding to know why all was still peaceful. She arrived just in time to see Lady Elara, ruler in hand, apparently giving me a stern lecture. "Rhea, you have some nerve. 3 maids couldn't stop you from sneaking into the kitchen to pilfer food. Eat your fill then, and see if I bother calling a physician for you again." Lady Elara's voice was full of feigned exasperation. I had nothing to deny. I had been caught with a stolen honey cake. And why did we know the Dowager was behind us? Because she was truly hard of hearing. Not only did she mishear others, but she also seemed to think no one could hear her, even when she whispered to her attendant loud enough for the entire courtyard to hear every word. Yes, let her be angry. Good. A fall would be even better. Let that brat in her belly fall right out. The moment those words left her lips, the courtyard fell deathly silent. Even Lord Kaelen, who had just returned home and was striding towards us, froze mid-step. To be honest, I rarely saw this nominal husband of mine. He left for court while I was still asleep, and when he returned, I usually found an excuse to slip away from Lady Elara and read my beloved adventure scrolls in my room. The look he gave the Dowager that day, I'll never forget it. If he'd stepped any closer to her, I felt I might have suffocated from the sheer intensity of his fury. He coldly ordered his attendant to escort the Dowager out, his voice like ice as he warned her that if she ever dared trouble Lady Elara again, he would stake his life, and the entire old Song family estate would not know peace. The Dowager left, utterly humiliated. I had a sinking feeling she wouldn't let this go. I didn't have to wait long. The very next afternoon, after Lord Kaelen left for his duties, the Dowager returned, this time with a menacing retinue of burly household guards. Spotting Lady Elara, she ordered her men to restrain Lyris and the other servants who tried to intervene. Perhaps she considered Pippa and me on her side, or simply hadn't noticed us huddled in a corner, for we were left alone for the moment. Am I, as a mother-in-law, not entitled to discipline my daughter-in-law? Dowager Morwenna drawled, taking a sip of tea, before ordering her men to force Lady Elara to kneel in the courtyard under the blazing sun. I indulged you before, and you thought yourself invaluable? Before he married, Kaelen listened to me. It's women like you who sow discord between mother and son. If I hadn't withheld his share of the inheritance, why would he insist on moving out? Wasn't it your instigation? Watching Lady Elara's face pale, I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms, struggling to remain calm. Rushing out now would be futile against so many. So, I stealthily began to climb the courtyard wall. My sprained arm, not yet fully healed, made my movements slow. "She's trying to escape over the wall," one of the guards yelled. The Dowager shrieked from behind, "Catch that ungrateful wretch." Men rushed towards me. A sharp pain exploded in my back. A rock the size of a fist struck me. Just as I was about to reach the top of the wall, my body lurched and I lost my balance. Gritting my teeth, I used the momentum of the blow to tumble over the other side. I landed hard, a searing pain shooting through my ankle. Stumbling, I forced myself to run, disappearing into the bustling crowds of the street. By the time I reached the ministry where Lord Kaelen worked, I was a tear-streaked, disheveled mess. Thankfully, I wasn't too incoherent to quickly recount everything. Lord Kaelen listened, his face first stunned, then contorting with a terrifying rage.
"What?"
"Robbers in my house," he roared, his voice suddenly loud and commanding.
"Men."
"To the estate, immediately. We must rescue them." Watching the group thunder away, my heart pounded. Just let Lady Elara be safe. Please, let her be all right. The shock of the attack sent Lady Elara into premature labor. Lord Kaelen, his face a mask of cold fury, ordered all the Dowager's guards captured and treated as actual robbers. As for Dowager Morwenna herself, he allowed her to leave. However, word had it that on her way back to her estate, a disheveled, one-eyed beggar intercepted her carriage and beat her half to death. She wasn't found until nightfall and had to be carried home. I suspected, with a grim certainty, that Lord Kaelen had orchestrated it. He hadn't truly swallowed his anger. Yet, this formidable man, when Lady Elara cried out in labor, before Pippa could even shed a tear or young Rorik could do more than whimper, Lord Kaelen was the first to weep. In the end, it was young Rorik, seeming to age 10 years in one night, who patted his father's shoulder and said solemnly, "Father, don't worry. Mother will be all right." It made me stare. These three were so fragile, always crying. I, on the other hand, had only fainted 3 times during the whole ordeal and was revived each time with a sharp pinch to an acupressure point. Thanks to all the spirits, Lady Elara was blessed. Both mother and child were safe. She delivered an adorable baby girl. Young Rorik and Lord Kaelen were overjoyed, and I was so happy I grabbed Pippa's hands and spun her in a joyful circle, completely forgetting my ankle, which the physician later diagnosed as likely fractured. But from that day on, Pippa's expression became strange. Lady Elara, too, was different. The new little mistress, whom they named Lilia, would gurgle and smile whenever she saw me. But Lady Elara would just stare at me, lost in thought. I wanted to ask what was wrong, but I couldn't find the courage. My name is Ria, and I am not a fool. These recent days, sleeping in a warm room, eating well, I cherished what I had. For an indentured servant like me, whose contract was in another's hands, life and death were decided by a single word. Many things I understood, but dared not dwell on. Years ago, after my mother died, my father quickly remarried and sold me for a pittance. Heaven knows, being a servant is easy, escaping that status is impossibly hard. My very life had been bought for a mere 10 taels of silver. To buy my freedom would cost more than 10 times that. I suppose I was still fortunate. Because of this face, the traffickers had been gentler with me than with others, rarely striking my face. If the dowager hadn't bought me, they would have sold me as a concubine. If no one wanted me, and I grew too old, I would have been sold to a brothel. At least there, they could recoup their investment. Enough of old sorrows. These past few months in Lady Elara's household had been better than all my 16 years of wandering. Pippa and Rorik were my friends. Lord Kaelen, though fearsome, didn't trouble me and even provided silver for my beloved adventure scrolls. And Lady Elara, she was kinder to me than anyone had ever been. Even if this current happiness was just a play, I was willing to lose myself in it. Truly, if one day Lady Elara wanted me dead, as long as it was quick, I wouldn't blame her. Yet, when Pippa brought the increasingly bitter medicinal broth each day, I couldn't help but sigh. Is this still from the lady? To build up my strength? I asked. Pippa unconsciously tightened her grip on the tray, nodding slightly. Yes, mistress. Hearing her call me mistress, with that inflection, I smiled bitterly to myself but said nothing more, just took the bowl and drank it down in one gulp. When Pippa turned to leave, I called her back. She seemed lost in thought and startled. Has the dowager not sent any letters recently? I asked.
No, Pippa replied.
Then I vomited blood. Lady Elara, barely recovered from childbirth, rushed to my side, her face etched with worry. And in that moment, I realized something had profoundly changed. If Pippa had many good qualities, I dared say I was very perceptive. I didn't know when it happened, but Lady Elara's gaze towards me had lost some of its distance. The physician who examined me stated bluntly that I'd been poisoned. As for whether the old ailment, reactivated by the poison, could be cured, that depended on fate. After the physician left, Lady Elara's face turned to ice. She immediately sent for Lord Kaelen. Several servants who had signed death pledges also arrived. All the maids in my room were dismissed, except Pippa. I suddenly remembered something Pippa had once whispered to me late at night. Ria, do you think our lives are truly our own to control? A cord in my mind seemed to stretch taut, then snap. "My lady, please wait," I said suddenly. Lady Elara looked at me, saying nothing, but gestured for Lyris to bring out several letters. They were spread out. One of them was the very letter I had written, with those two crooked words, "Rest assured." "Rhea, this has nothing to do with you," Lady Elara said. "I know you are not literate. I have found the real troublemaker." She then produced several other letters. The handwriting was elegant, the characters dense. Though I couldn't read them, I knew they contained nothing good. I wanted to explain but didn't know how to begin. I did know some characters, just not many. That's why Pippa usually read for me. She knew more, and she was the first person I considered a true friend, a bond we had built together. But as I thought this, a lump formed in my throat, and I couldn't speak. "She was a nightingale," Lord Kaelen interjected, seeing Lady Elara hesitate to continue, "trained in the southern prefectures. Nightingales, beautiful young girls, tutored from childhood in music, chess, calligraphy, painting, poetry, etiquette, and decorum, destined to be sold as concubines or gifted to influential men." He glanced at Pippa, his eyes like chips of ice. "A common maid, yet she's literate. Her palms bear the calluses of holding a brush and plucking zither strings. Don't you recall how often she lost her way, wandering the rear courtyards these past weeks? If buying you cost 100 taels of silver, Rhea, buying her would have cost 1,000. Lord Kaelen gave a humorless laugh. "My dear stepmother values me highly indeed, to expend such effort. And you," he looked at me, tricked and plotted against, and still smiling like a fool. Seeing Pippa remain impassive even after being exposed, Lord Kaelen sneered. "Secretly passing messages and causing unrest in the household is one thing. But to dare put crimson sand in Rhea's tonic, to attempt to take her life and usurp her position, that crime is unforgivable. Even if someone instigated you, it cannot be excused. Don't bother denying it. We have physical evidence, and a young servant boy saw you delivering letters. The proof is irrefutable. How do you intend to argue?" Pippa said nothing, only turned to look at me. When our eyes met, she seemed to flinch as if burned, then squeezed her eyes shut, as if steeling herself. "It's true, I did it. My indenture is still with the Dowager. I have always been her person. I thought you didn't care for me because of Rhea, so I acted." She looked down. It was Rhea who was too foolish, allowing me to take advantage. Her words pierced my heart, but before I could speak, Lady Elara's cold voice cut in. "If the roots of the catalpa tree in the courtyard hadn't been poisoned with crimson sand, causing the entire great tree to wither, I might not have investigated so thoroughly." My mind suddenly cleared. I shot up in bed, almost choking. "Wait." Lord Kaelen looked at me, puzzled. "What is it?" I looked at Pippa, who seemed resigned to her fate, then turned to Lord Kaelen. "How do you intend to deal with her?" He snorted. "Naturally, report her to the authorities. For attempted murder, there are plenty of tortures awaiting her." A daring idea flashed through my mind. "Yes, death would be too easy." I chimed in. "But after conviction, wouldn't she face torture first?" If she unfortunately encountered some sadistic executioner, just one round of whipping, then left for the wounds to fester and die slowly, that might be even worse than a quick death, don't you think?" Lord Kaelen and Lady Elara looked at me with slight bewilderment. I, however, hid a sly smile, all gleaned from my adventure scrolls. Pippa's eyes widened in horror. I just gave a small, bitter smile.
"Well?"
"Do you still want to confess to everything now?" Pippa collapsed to the floor, looking up at me, then at Lady Elara. "I didn't want to. But my indenture, it's still with the Dowager. The lady retrieved Rhea's, but I am still her property. Besides, my background is sensitive. Just hearing of my origins makes people wary." She, too, gave a bitter laugh. "Right now, I can still be a maid. But if the Dowager truly wants to act, I fear I won't even be able to keep that status." Lady Elara was stunned. "How can this be?" "I personally want to ask for your indenture as well," but the Dowager said you weren't on the servant rolls, just a commoner hired for work. She sighed. I should have retrieved both your contracts. But at the time, my spirits were low, and I was deceived. It was my oversight. I heard every word clearly. So, Lady Elara had intended to free us both from the start. The Dowager had deliberately lied, only handing over mine. Perhaps Lady Elara feared I would think she wanted to control us with the indentures, so she never clarified, unintentionally giving the Dowager an opening.
So?
In Pippa's eyes, the ship of our friendship had long since capsized. No, this wasn't the time to think about sinking ships, because Pippa, in her long confession, had missed the most important point. I spoke slowly. I wasn't poisoned by Pippa. I looked at her. Whether there was poison in the medicine, you know best in your heart, don't you? Even if you don't want to live, don't take all the blame on yourself. Pippa's mouth opened as if to speak, but her reaction confirmed the audacious suspicion in my heart. Initially, I had suspected Lady Elara herself wanted me dead. But every time Pippa brought the medicine, her face couldn't hide her guilt. Seeing her still hesitate, I decided to explain. I was forced to drink crimson sand before, I said softly. Though the physician said I was poisoned, this old ailment being reactivated, it wasn't recent. It was already in my system. The night before the Dowager bought me, the traffickers were preparing to send me to a brothel. I had to lie then. The reason I knew the fate of a servant girl with some beauty was because I had one foot through that door already. The crimson sand was forced down my throat. It's for your own good, the traffickers whispered. Otherwise, a beating to ruin your womb would be necessary to prevent pregnancy. This way is less trouble. I wanted to roll my eyes.
Good?
They were just afraid that if I was beaten and covered in bruises, the brothel madam wouldn't pay a high price. I had resigned myself then, thinking my life was over. But the next morning, they encountered the Dowager, a woman with more silver than sense. She wanted to buy a docile, obedient girl. The traffickers, wanting more money, convinced her to choose me instead of sending me to the brothel. Perhaps I'd fetch a better price. And so it was. She chose me, and the traffickers got an extra sum to seal their lips. Before I left, they whispered a threat in my ear. If you dare say a word, at most we'll return the silver, but you will definitely end up in that brothel. So I chose to lie. The truth is, I continued, my voice low, I can no longer bear children. My body, already weakened, was further damaged by the crimson sand. It's hard to fully recover. On the surface, I look normal, but any change in weather, any strong emotion, brings on illness. For a family that takes a concubine solely to bear heirs, I am like a discarded cup, sooner or later to be thrown away. Fortunately, the people in this household treated me well, and I managed to survive. That time the physician came, I was in so much pain and fear, crying and begging, that I managed to avoid a thorough examination. He was in a hurry to see some official son and, seeing my digestive upset, didn't probe further. But while I could deceive others, I couldn't deceive my own body. My health, depleted over years, with the lingering effects of the crimson sand, my body was already weak. The potent tonics Lady Elara gave me, meant to heal, instead disrupted that fragile balance. That's why good medicine turned harmful, a weakened constitution rejecting nourishment. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but chuckle. I hadn't expected Pippa to be so dense. Just now, hearing Lady Elara describe finding out about Pippa's poisoning, I almost laughed out loud. Lady Elara, wanting me to recover quickly, had used precious medicinal herbs. Pippa, under the Dowager's orders to put crimson sand in my medicine to make me barren, or even better if I died, then perhaps Lord Kaelen would notice her, hadn't actually done it. She had hidden the packet of poison, burying it under a large tree, intending to destroy the evidence. As a result, the tree soon withered and died, which made Lady Elara suspicious and led to the investigation. If it were an empty packet, burying it wouldn't have harmed the tree. The Dowager certainly wouldn't have given her a large quantity of crimson sand. So, Pippa truly hadn't poisoned me. It seemed the ship of our friendship hadn't sunk after all. I recounted everything from my past, then waited for everyone's reaction, already braced for a scolding from Lady Elara. If this were before, I might have thought she'd be furious enough to punish me. But now, I felt no fear, because Lady Elara genuinely cared for me. When that incriminating letter was found, coinciding with the Dowager's visit to cause trouble, how could she not have suspected me? In her eyes, she didn't know the Dowager was behind Pippa. She only knew everything seemed connected to me. Yet, just as I hadn't hesitated to climb a wall to save her, she, faced with so much evidence, hadn't immediately concluded I was the culprit. As I finished speaking, tears streamed down Lady Elara's face, tears that had been welling for a long time. Lord Kaelen gently embraced her, his eyes, when he looked at me, filled with sorrow. Lady Elara, I spoke again. Pippa was threatened. She was forced to deliver those messages. She had no choice. Pippa, hearing this, looked conflicted. Seeing Lady Elara weep, she too broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. I didn't poison her, but I didn't want to be controlled anymore. Why can't I even die in peace?
Wah.
Unlike Lady Elara's quiet tears, Pippa's wails were so loud they made my head spin, and I nearly thought my soul was about to leave my body. I smiled faintly, my eyelids heavy. This time I thought I really might not wake up. But just then, a hesitant knock came from outside, followed by the physician's voice. Lord Kaelen, Lady Elara, the prescription is ready. You can send someone to fetch the medicine with me. This illness, it's not incurable. It hasn't reached that point. My apologies if I was presumptuous. It seemed I had cried a little too soon. The physician came daily to check my pulse, perform acupuncture, and adjust my medicines. I began to feel I probably wouldn't die after all. Lady Elara, who had always valued dignity and endured much to maintain peace, finally had an awakening. She personally led people to the old Song estate, using my poisoning, half-truth, half-exaggeration, to thoroughly intimidate Dowager Morwenna, even feigning an intent to report her to the authorities, which implicated the Dowager's own biological children. The Dowager, knowing she was in the wrong, not only produced a pile of compensation but also handed over Pippa's indenture contract to Lady Elara. Even the portion of the family assets she had hidden when the household divided was forced out of her. Already suffering from a chronic illness, this ordeal nearly caused her to collapse. She had one more mess to clean up, though. Years ago, after buying me, she'd felt uneasy, fearing someone might reveal the truth and tarnish her benevolent reputation. So she'd sent men to drive the traffickers out of the capital. But her men had been too heavy-handed, and in the ensuing struggle, someone was accidentally killed. Lord Kaelen, upholding justice even against his own family, had personally overseen the arrest of that subordinate. Lady Elara visited me one day, smiling as she recounted this. Before I married, she said, I was a girl who feared nothing. Even after marrying into this family, I never thought I'd have to yield to anyone. But living with Kaelen all these years, watching him rise from a minor 7th-rank official to his current position, it truly hasn't been easy. I didn't want idle gossip to affect his career, nor did I want all his efforts to be in vain. Now, I understand. If I am firm, others will be wary. Compared to retreating and enduring, it's better to fight for what's right, even if it seems unreasonable. Evasion is never the answer. After saying this, she seemed lighter, a burden lifted from her shoulders. Then she turned to me. Rhea, have you ever thought about leaving this place? I was stunned. Leaving? When you've recovered your health, I will set you free, Lady Elara said gently. My eyes flickered. I had always assumed I would live out my days in a haze, never daring to dream of those two words, freedom. Freedom, at different times, has a different price. If I could choose, of course, I wouldn't want to enter a brothel, nor be a concubine to anyone. I just wanted to be myself, a person named Rhea. Lady Elara smiled softly. I've seen it, you know. You're very interested in Rorik's arithmetic lessons, aren't you? I blinked, about to nod, but felt a little shy. I did want to learn, but those were lessons for a 5-year-old. I found it difficult, and I couldn't read the characters the tutor wrote. I will find someone to teach you literacy, Lady Elara continued kindly. Then, these things won't be difficult for you anymore. I didn't know how to respond. Lady Elara had been so good to me. How could I ever repay this kindness? The household is currently short of a manager, she said. If you can take on the role of chief steward, you would be doing me a great service. Hearing this, I immediately nodded, without a trace of hesitation. As long as it was something that could help Lady Elara, I was willing to do anything. The physician who checked my pulse said I had a strong hold on life. In truth, initially, I had one foot in the spirit world, and even he wasn't sure he could save me. He hadn't told me the full extent of it, only quietly informed Lady Elara. I suddenly remembered how, every time Lady Elara visited me, 8 out of 10 times she'd claim dust had gotten into her eyes, which were always red. After I had mostly recovered, Lady Elara took me to register a new household status for myself and formally adopted me as her sworn younger sister. If you truly see me as your elder sister, don't say any more words of thanks. When I was pregnant with little Lilia, my mood was always gloomy. It was thanks to you being by my side, cheering me up. Besides, if it weren't for you that day, I fear little Lilia might not have been born safely. Ria, perhaps you don't realize it, but to me, you are truly important. Little Lilia was, of course, the little mistress. Hearing this, I stopped trying to offer thanks. Some things are better shown through actions than words. Everyone in the capital knew that the proprietor of the cloud-wreathed pavilion tea house, a certain Warden Vance who had fled the city, had been replaced by a young woman of not only unique background but also considerable skill. Beside her was a formidable older woman, rumored to have once served in the imperial palace. It had to be said, their tea house's booming business was well-deserved. No one knew who their miraculous chef was, only that many larger tea houses in the capital had repeatedly tried to poach them, all to no avail. Their signature creamy sky milk confection alone had people booking tables days in advance. Even more alluring were the storytelling sessions held at the tea house. No one knew who wrote these tales, but everyone guessed the author must be a master who had read thousands upon thousands of adventure scrolls. Booksellers from all over the capital clamored to find this writer, but, like their attempts to hire the chef, they all returned empty-handed. Right now, I was in the kitchen, adjusting the filling for a new pastry, while conveniently having the older woman, Matron Lin, transcribe the latest installment of a story I'd just thought up. A young apprentice rushed in, holding a stack of silver notes. Steward Ria, Manager Shin from the Golden Abundance Emporium sent these silver notes, just hoping for a chance to meet you once. I nodded, my hands still kneading dough. Manager Shin? I don't quite recall. Does he want to meet the chef or the storyteller? It seems he wants to meet the steward herself. My hands paused mid-knead. Well, might as well. It's a waste not to accept silver notes, after all. I stretched and prepared to go out. But as I was led into the private room, I saw a very familiar figure. Elder Sister Elara. I cried out joyfully. She chuckled softly, calmly handed the silver notes to the doorkeeper, then led me away. Meeting your esteemed steward is no easy feat. 500 taels of silver is merely the door-knocking fee. You know, Lady Elara said, her tone half joking, half serious, just like the day she'd first brought me to her home. I feigned a cough. Indeed. Even with a knife to my neck, I wouldn't betray this place. Lady Elara laughed at my theatrics. So, if I were to insist on you returning to my service, would you agree? I immediately melted, all bravado gone. Sister, if you call me back, it's far more persuasive than a knife to my neck, truly. As I spoke, her little daughter, Lilia, rushed over, and I scooped her up into a hug. Fly high, fly high. The little girl giggled, revealing 2 tiny, pearly teeth. All right, Steward Ria, Lady Elara said gently. Come to the estate for dinner tonight. The crimson boar hawk is already simmering. You'll be just in time to eat it hot. I immediately nodded, a wide, genuine smile spreading across my face.